Okay, so yes, welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brendan Rogers. I'm the marketing director at Fundraising. It's awesome to be here. What is for actually the 10th session in the Us and Us collective session this year. Feels kind of crazy to say that we've done as 10 sessions since lockdown, the first lockdown happened, which has been as many months. And Emily, you've been involved in all of them, I think, pretty much.
I think so, yeah.
So that's great to have you here as well.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And Fee, we've got Fee from Macmillan, as I just said. Fee, you just want to say hello?
Hi, thank you for having me.
And great, it's brilliant to have you guys here. So for those of you who are used to coming to our sessions, you'll know how we do things. But please put any questions you have in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and do make sure you do put the questions in, because it really brings the session to life, and we like these to be a bit more of a conversation rather than like a seminar type thing. But yeah, okay. So for our agenda today, I'm going to wrap up this welcome. I'm going to talk about sort of a bit of what a year it's been, and do a little bit of a scene setting. Emily's going to talk about insights from the year and how the sector has weathered the storm. And then you're going to go on to talk about how Macmillan started to pivot. Is that right, Emily?
Yep.
Brilliant. And then appropriately so, Fee will come in and explain, raise a mug, and everyone can grill her afterwards. So I'm sure that's what will happen. So okay, all right, I'll get started. So yeah, what a year it has been. I mean, when we look back to, even January, but fundraising was tough, and digital, was not the sector's strong point. I mean, if I look back 2019, I can remember so many sessions and reports that were talking about how there are innovators out there, there is innovation happening in the sector, but there are still so many organizations that need to mature digitally, and that leadership needs to embrace digital as a priority. The events fundraising sector is becoming a bit crowded, lots of different events, some charities starting their own events, but then many mass participation events as well. And the solution to these things was always going to be new technologies, new events, and new ideas. I just don't think any of us thought that the thing that was going to prompt it was going to be a global pandemic. And I mean, that has been such an intense time for us, hasn't it? These headlines that I've got on here has to be a drop in the ocean of the news, the predictions, and the uncertainty that we've all faced. And I think for the first time, we've appreciated the humanity and the value of having our fellow humans close by, with the forced distance that we've all had to endure this year. And for the first time, we've needed help through technology to help us be together, help us bring ourselves together. And within that, I think that the charity sector and the non-for-profit sector has found a common ground on how they can unite people, and it's been fantastic to see that's been a thing. At fundraising, what have we seen? We've seen that there's been a lot of growth in the fundraising, that people have been more generous than ever. Creativity has been a real strength of the sector. These numbers are, I should say, probably a little bit reverse than what we would have expected to see in usual years, where virtual challenges we've had 40% of the projects have been virtual challenges, 32% have been DIY or community fundraising, and only 18% have been fundraising projects which were physical. And I think that, we probably would have expected that to be about 70% of physical events in previous years. So not only are these numbers replacing that 70% that we would have seen last year, but they're actually improving on that. We're seeing an increase in generosity, an increase in creativity, and this sort of spread of prolific good, which is really amazing to see. and just what that looks like is even better. I mean, we have this sort of, this is only 32 projects, but I mean, look at that wall, look at that color, look at the variety. It's a it's such a plethora of impact when you look across, you know, and these are campaigns from all across the world. You've got food banks in there, you've got volunteer groups, you've got corporate challenges, you've got you know, you've got some big charities in there, you've got small charities. And so I'm going to pick out a couple just to sort of show how it really doesn't matter about the size of the organization. It really has been about keeping supporters and keeping community at the heart. So this is Wexford Virtual Relay for Life, and it was based in Ireland, and they approached it with nervousness. They weren't sure that they were going to be able to set their usual target, so they actually reduced their target to 55,000 euros, and they smashed it. They raised over 155,000, which is actually more than their 2019 physical event, which just goes to show. And they did that by making sure that their community had a website that felt like their home. It felt like it was similar to, you know, all of their existing events. This is a virtual pivot, I suppose you'd call it. And it was a fantastic example of how you can keep that sense of community in digital experiences, and how you can keep that sense of value and bringing people together. And yeah, we had Out of the Shadows, which needs a video. Because it's just so beautiful. I just love how this site comes alive, like literally. But Lifeline Australia, where they are a suicide prevention charity, and they created this very powerful remembrance garden where you can see that people can donate and create flowers in the garden. And this is very much like a, you know, it's a dedication, but it's a donor experience. And I think that we don't often talk about donor experiences. We should probably ask ourselves, how often do we think about the fundraiser experience, but think of the donations as transactions? But actually, those donors are people giving a gift, and this is a really important point in the journey. And I think that, you know, we've seen a few examples of things like this, and it's an absolutely wonderful thing to see, and it's so creative. Again, when we're bringing people in, fundraisers and donors together into their own different versions of the same experience. Let's move on. Then there's this one is in the US. Oh, I should have said, yes, sorry, that last one, Out of the Shadows, that was in Australia, and it was a large charity. For those who don't know Lifeline, everyone in Australia, I think, will probably be very familiar. The 5x5K for Good is a USA event. It was a physical social distance event, which allowed people to do QR code scans to continue their runs. They did 5 different runs in 24 hours, tracked through 2 different apps, Run, Go and Strava, and allowed people to still take part in something, which was, you know, a really like a brilliant kind of and very inventive way to keep things moving, and again allow people to continue to participate. And I think at the core of each of these 3 events, what we're seeing is that people have been able to be united again and be brought together. And as a sector, I think we should be proud of that. That's what has been a continual theme of this year. Is it's been continual challenges, continual distance, forced distance, and together we've been able to unite our communities, unite our tribes, and deliver impact to our supporters and the causes that we're working with. So anyway, that's my intro done. Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, what a year. It's been mad. The probably experienced 5 years of digital adoption, which I would have said a year ago, that how great would that be? But I'm not sure this is the way I would have imagined it happening. But it is the silver lining that we are looking at a lot of events and a lot of charities, like, you know, embracing new challenge, new strengths and new skills. So let's keep that momentum going. Let's keep innovating. Let's keep acting quickly and you know, keep that agility, and let's see where it goes. I'm wishing you all the best. And Emily, you're up next with the Virtual Fundraising Monitor.
Yeah,
Just
great.
toss it
Just
around.
gonna touch in on a question that's just come through for you there, actually, Brendan. With the stats that you shared earlier, that adds up to 90%. So the question is, what's the remaining 10%?
Oh, so yeah, they're kind of assorted appeals and bits and bobs, I guess, is a way of saying it. So there are some which some which don't fit the mold, and it was difficult to sort through the list and actually go, like everything is under the same bracket. So the rest were appeals and miscellaneous.
Great, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm going to talk a bit about the things that have happened in the sector and really what we have found and uncovered from doing the Virtual Fundraising Monitor. So if you can click on, please, Brendan. So as Brendan said, the world has massively changed this year in absolutely every way, but particularly in events and in fundraising. And we at Massive just really wanted to know about that. So for any of you who have been on any of these webinars that we've been doing since April, a theme on almost all of them is virtual, and the questions that we always get at the end are almost always on virtual events and what good looks like and what we should expect for different average values and return rates and things like that. So we decided we needed to find all of that out. So we've been producing various reports for a number of years, like the Top 25 and the Sports Fundraising Monitor, which hopefully some of you will have seen before. So we wanted to develop one for virtual fundraising as well. So the Virtual Fundraising Monitor was born. We collected data from over 150 different campaigns, and we've compared that and used lots of other sources of data as well to compile a really comprehensive report. So in total, the report that we've done covers fundraising values of £60 million from almost 2 million donors. And of the campaigns that we've looked at, there are 45% of them are new campaigns, 38% of them are pivots of existing campaigns, and 16% are existing virtual campaigns. But I guess what all of those numbers show is, and this won't be a surprise to anyone, that virtual really isn't a dip. So we know that virtual and socially distant events are here to stay for some time, as I'm sure we're all experiencing at the moment. The rules and what's happening are changing all of the time, but the one thing that will be consistent through all of this is that virtual can still happen. We knew that things were starting to accelerate digitally, and as Brendan said at the start, the pandemic just really sped this up. So we've seen from the data that we've looked at that 60% of charities undertook digital fundraising for the first time this year since the pandemic hit. And so many charity supporters have taken part in their first virtual fundraising event in the last 9 months. And the good news is they've really enjoyed it. Millions of people have found new ways to communicate and exercise and fundraise. And although we really do believe that the physical events will be returning at some point, and hopefully some point soon, the virtual aspect of that and having virtual events will continue to be an increasing part of most charities' fundraising portfolio, and really does serve a great purpose and sometimes a different purpose to the physical events there as well. But the part of this that I'm going to be focusing on today is more about pivoting events. If you do want to see the rest of the report, then it is available to download on our website at Massive, so do take a look. But as I said, what we're going to talk about today is more around those kind of mature or existing events that then needed to pivot to reflect what was happening in the world, really. So next slide, please. So I guess there's no denying that pivoting an event is really a challenge. So we looked at some of the stats around those campaigns that were able to do that this year. And, there's some really good success stories there, but it has absolutely been challenging. So as the numbers say, 40% of people who, and it was an average of 40% of people who transferred to the virtual version if they were normally going to sign up to or had already signed up to a physical version of the event. So it's not as simple as to say, I'm turning this event into a virtual one and that everyone is going to do that at the same time. We saw that 44% said that their income stayed the same or fell when they pivoted to a virtual event. and that 36% did actually manage to use the opportunity to grow participation in events. But obviously 36% isn't quite as high as some of the numbers that we probably would want to see here. So we know that virtual does have some barriers, but there's also some really positive stuff to come from this as well. So first of all, it's cheaper to put on a virtual version of your event. We know that there's been the ability to kind of tweak propositions or make small changes and invest some of the costs that would have been spent into additional marketing, which has managed to grow participation. So there's lots of positives to come out of being able to do this. However, if we go on to the next slide, we also know that the average values aren't quite as strong when we look at a virtual event. So as an example, the value of an average non-virtual runner doing a fundraising event is £229. But for an average virtual fundraising runner, it's £128. And we've also seen a drop in the remittance rates as well, going from 70% for a non-virtual runner down to 45% for a virtual runner. So, you know, there are some big difference in those numbers, and we've actually seen that happen with cycling, walking and other activities as well. So when we think about why this might be, there's a few things in there. Really, this year, there has been a really quick turnaround time for some of these events. So we've seen so many charities manage to get something out the door really quickly, getting things out there in an MVP version or following a really agile approach, which is brilliant. But that also means there might not be the same level of stewardship, and there might not be quite as strong a supporter journey in there as well. We know that people are registering for virtual events and starting to fundraise much closer to the event date than they would normally do for for non-virtual events. So there's less of a fundraising period for them, I guess, where there's less of a fixed date and a time to consider and training and all that kind of thing. There's less of a push for people to get on with their fundraising at that stage as well. We know that the earlier that people start fundraising, the better. So as I said, that can also feed into the lower average values. And we do also feel, and I'm sure many of you out there who work in events and are missing those physical events, there is something about being physically present that does in some way really make that experience more real and helps translate that into more committed fundraising as well. In terms of the remittance rates, as I said, they are significantly lower when we look at the numbers we were seeing before in our sports fundraising monitor. And again, some of the factors in that are also some of the reasons why virtual works so well. It's much easier to sign up. There's less consideration points. There's often less barriers that need to be addressed when signing up. So it's really great for acquisition, but actually converting that into a return rate is where it becomes a little bit harder. It's also easier to drop out. There's less commitment, and in a lot of the events that have put on virtual versions, there hasn't been an entry fee either. So there's just less of a commitment from that. We've actually seen research that shows that 50% of free signups end up in no-shows. So it's just worth considering having some level of commitment to be able to really bring that kind of psychological effect in, that people feel like they're now doing something and therefore should get on with their fundraising as well. Next slide, please. So lots of positives to come out of this as well. And really, when we've looked across all of the virtual events and pulled out what good looks like, and also from the work that we've been doing up until this point, I think the brilliant stuff that comes out of a virtual event is really very similar to what we see in physical events as well. So when you see, the picture on here of the London Marathon and seeing all of those people coming together to raise money for a cause in something that everyone understands, that's really what works well for a virtual event as well. So virtual and the pandemic and all of that hasn't changed the fact that as humans, as people, we really want connection and we want that social interaction. And I think we see more and more now with virtual, whether that is doing an event or if it's doing a webinar like today, or if it's doing, I'm sure many of you have had your virtual Christmas parties and things this year, like all of those things that have changed. There's so much about connection in there still. The fact that we now all know each other's dogs and cats and children and the inside of people's houses that you wouldn't have seen before. That element of virtual is really helping bring the connection that events used to bring about. So we know it's still really important with virtual events to give people that sense of connection and that sense of community. We've seen that the most successful events do allow participants to interact and form communities, whether it be through a Facebook group or a Strava group, something that gives them that sense of coming together with other people and doing something for the same reason. We also know that cause is still hugely important for a virtual event, just as it is for a physical event. So we know that there's plenty of different walking and step counting and baking and quizzing and cycling and all of the other disciplines of a virtual event out there at the moment. And we often get asked whether the market is now saturated and whether it's overcrowded. And there may be a lot out there, but actually it's each charity's cause that's going to give that USP and make it different and make it be the reason that their audience wants to connect and wants to do that. So although there might be already lots of different versions out there, it really is each person's cause that is making it really attractive to their audience. So it's really important to keep that central to any ask. And then the third area that really helps with virtual events that we've seen is really what good looks like is simplicity. So, you know, it's no, again, it's not new news to know that people are really busy, and actually people probably aren't as interested in what we're doing as we would like to think they are. They've got a lot on and there's a lot to do. And I think now more than ever, people are spending so much time on screen that it's difficult to get cut through and make sure that what you're asking people to do is really kind of understood and stands out. So simplicity in the ask is really essential. And when you think about peer-to-peer fundraising, whether that's virtual or whether that's physical, the fact that you can ask and explain really easily what you're doing and why you want someone to sponsor you is what works best for any kind of fundraising. So having that simple ask that can be really explained in probably a sentence or two has been really key to those virtual events that have been successful. So that kind of gives us a bit of an overview of kind of pivots and what we've seen in virtual. If you could just move on, please. So a lot of what we've talked about in the past on these webinars and a lot of the questions have been around kind of new and how to start a new virtual event, especially to make up from income that has been lost from mass participation. But actually, as I said, the pivoting has been really essential as well. And really established events like World's Biggest Coffee Morning also have needed to pivot this year. So at Massive, we were fortunate enough to be able to work with Fee and the team at Macmillan on pivoting Coffee Morning. Thank you. So I'm not going to speak too much on behalf of Fee and Macmillan because it really is their story to tell, but when we came to this project, so Coffee Morning was turning 30 this year, which is a huge milestone and should be something that could be really well celebrated. But unfortunately, the impact of COVID meant that what was, should have been a year to be celebrated with the usual kind of huge support from people all over the country had to be looked at in a completely different way. So World's Biggest Coffee Morning has always thrived by being something that anyone can do and has been a really excellent tool for bringing groups of people together. So building that connection that we know is really important. The essence of the event up until this year really has been community and it's been really executed by having a physical gathering of people. So the team at Macmillan recognised really quickly that they were going to need to pivot the event this year. So back in May, we started working with them on the project. And to be completely honest, when we started working on that, we were thinking, just in case COVID is still a thing in September, we better have some different ways of doing this, which thankfully we did. So at the time, we didn't really know what the lockdown restrictions would be, when they would ease, what the new normal would look like, or even if that would be here by then. But we did know that we had to assume that a high level of social distancing would remain, and particularly for the most vulnerable, high-risk people who are also a large part of the audience for Coffee Morning. So where we got to was the fact that we needed to expand the proposition. So if you could just move on, thank you. We knew that there would be an overall risk to the product in 2020 and that lockdown and social distancing measures would reduce the number of people willing to host a physical event, either through the government guidance that would be around at that time, through lasting anxiety or through personal circumstances. So there was a concern that not all audiences would also be open to just a direct conversion to a virtual event. So if we think back to those numbers at the beginning, it's not just a simple, okay, I'm now going to do that as a virtual version. So we needed to find ways that people could be involved in Coffee Morning in 2020 that would appeal to a large an audience as possible, but also continue to drive strong fundraising values. And it also gave an opportunity to test new ways of supporting Coffee Morning. So if we can move the slide, please. So what we wanted to do was really broaden that portfolio of activations while still maintaining the central proposition. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of everything we did, but through a week-long sprint process with the team at Macmillan, we came up with this portfolio of different ways that people could take part and interact with Coffee Morning still. So there was still hosting a coffee morning, albeit in a socially distant way, joining a coffee morning, so taking part in a virtual or a live streamed coffee morning happening elsewhere, doing something for Coffee Morning, so that could be taking on a different kind of physical event, and then contributing to Coffee Morning. If you can move slides. Thank you. So what we're, the area we're focusing on today is contributing to Coffee Morning. So I guess another part of what we wanted to do with this portfolio was build in different ways that people could contribute to Coffee Morning at different parts of the year as well. So we knew that if we went out with this kind of contributing to a Coffee Morning thing straight away, it's a really quick and easy way. And what we didn't want to do was lose really loyal and valuable audiences by giving them something really quick and easy to do. So this was something that came in a bit later in the kind of calendar of portfolio of activations for Macmillan. Next slide, please. And that was Raise a Mug. So I'm not going to go into any more detail because I will hand over to Fee, who's going to tell us a lot more about it.
Great, thank you. So thank you very much for having me, first of all, and thank you, Emily, for giving that introduction. I will give kind of a bit of a context as to how we got here, hopefully not repeating too much of what Emily has just said, and then dive straight on in. So if you can flick to the next slide, please. So I guess just to go kind of off of what Emily has just said and give a context of what Coffee Morning is. It's a well-known event in the diary. I'm sure everyone kind of has heard of Coffee Morning. Hopefully you've maybe even attended one. But the thing for us as we were thinking about this is we know that about 80% of our supporters hold a coffee morning kind of on that official day that we have each year, or at least in September. And without saying the words uncertain and unprecedented times, because they're probably the most overused words, is obviously what we were facing. And we knew that people couldn't kind of commit to necessarily holding an event, and especially not kind of putting that day in their diary as we were asking them to. So an event that was all about asking your social groups to get together didn't really feel like it was an inclusive enough ask or suitable for many of our supporters, when we knew that a lot of them that maybe would hold an event or attend an event could be shielding as well. So this is what's kind of led us all the way through to the innovation sprint, which we had across 5 days at the start of May. And if we flick onto the next slide, the 2 key things I'd say to take from this are quite literally nothing stops a Macmillan Coffee Morning. It's kind of the attitude we had the whole way through, and something that you could kind of feel throughout the entire process of getting ourselves to launch and Coffee Morning Day itself. And I think working with Massive here to shift our proposition and help kind of broaden who could participate and take part in Coffee Morning was something that was really, really key to us. And the types of audience we wanted to be able to touch upon were people that had held coffee mornings forever and ever with us, but just didn't think that they'd be able to find a way to do that this year, all the way through to people that maybe coffee morning was never going to be their thing, but they wanted to contribute in some way. And this product, Raise a Mug, really felt like it helped achieve that for these people. But the second thing that is in italics on this page that I just really wanted to highlight is that every proposition that we were kind of working towards and thinking about, we really wanted to have as a moment for the UK to come together, raise a mug and change lives. So that's kind of the thing we kept coming back to, and making sure that whatever we were kind of putting out there or testing really felt like it came back to that moment and therefore linked back to Coffee Morning. as a whole. So without further ado, one of those products was Raise a Mug itself. And it really kind of felt like it says what it is on the tin. It's something like a really simple action that you can literally raise a mug and collectively kind of be with other people, and there was some sort of like meaningful sentiment behind that as well. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll talk through it a little bit more. So Raise a Mug, and what is it? The idea was that we were going to build a virtual wall of support where people could give a donation. It was an optional donation of their choice. Share a message of support. Lots of people kind of did that, just dedicating it to coffee morning or maybe dedicating it to a loved one, and upload an image if they wish. So if you have time and you want to look on the website, there's loads of lovely photos of people that have uploaded pictures of themselves raising a mug, and many kind of pets and great stuff like that as well. So I'd highly recommend having a little look. And I guess to touch a bit more as well on who it was for, we obviously had these audiences at the start where we wanted to be able to reach kind of this whole broad spectrum of people that held coffee mornings and didn't want to be able to, couldn't hold one this year, all the way through to those people that wanted to just get involved in some way. And from kind of seeing the people that were actually landing on the website and who was coming to the page, it really did kind of hit kind of that broad spectrum. And lots of the people that we saw would kind of share messages saying, I couldn't hold one this year, but I wanted to make a donation in lieu. And other people that are completely new to Macmillan and had landed on the web, probably not new to Macmillan, sorry, but new to Coffee Morning, who kind of landed on the website, wanted to support us in some way, especially kind of given the times that we were going through, and made a small donation there. And what's really great about those people is that kind of moving on from this phase, we are able to kind of steward them and talk to them and see what sort of Macmillan path they want to take with us as well. So going on to the next slide and kind of sharing a little bit more about how it worked. So on this slide, you can see a couple of different screenshots. The first one, which is on my left, I'm not good at my left and right, but on my left, the big picture, is a screenshot of what the platform looks like at the moment. And then the two smaller images are kind of if you had clicked donate and wanted to upload a photo and share your message, this is what you would have seen. So I guess, how did we get to this point and how did it work? The first thing to mention here is that we needed to launch it quickly. We had 6-week turnaround time and we had a really small budget available. So it was about being resourceful and creative with what we had and making sure that it was still something that felt really thought through and was really relevant within the existing kind of product portfolio, and something kind of linking back to Brendan's point that would really unite people as well. Like, we didn't want it to kind of just be like an off the cuff thing. We wanted it to feel like it was special and a part of Coffee Morning. So once we had scoped out the requirements for what we wanted the website functionality to look like, we had this 6-week ambitious turnaround time, and fundraising were there to lead us through and get us to launch. So big shout out for turning that around in such a quick time frame as well. Feel like there's a common theme. Yeah, a very common theme here of short turnaround times. But we wanted a platform that was really easy for supporters of Macmillan to kind of come on here, show their support publicly. There was an option to make it private if they didn't want to share it. And like I said, kind of feel united and be a part of something meaningful that visually was represented on this microsite. So yeah, we built this microsite in 6 weeks. We launched it at the end of August. So it was kind of after our big kind of Coffee Morning marketing had already gone live. This was an option for people who just knew that actually Coffee Morning wasn't going to be for them this year for whatever reason. And so we then shared this as an option for them to get involved if they wanted to. So there was hundreds of lovely entries that you can have a flick through and you'll see on there. And once somebody had uploaded their comment or photo to the site, they would receive a personalised thank you email from us. And flicking onto the next slide, you'll see as well that there was a totalizer function on there. So what was really nice is as soon as the person has added their contribution and that all goes through, the totalizer will update kind of in real time with the total amount that the whole page has raised. And I'm not sure how clear it is on screens, but it also shows what that money is then able to go on and do. So at the moment it's showing that 69 that the donations could fund a Macmillan nurse for 69 days. So to kind of talk through a bit more about who was using it. So we touched on who we thought was using it or who we wanted to be able to use it. But the actual people that we then did see coming to the site was pretty much kind of on point with who we were hoping for. Lots of those people who wanted to hold a coffee morning but couldn't, and they were donating in lieu, or they had just seen kind of some of our marketing and just really wanted to be able to support us and Coffee Morning and Macmillan in some way. So that is who we saw kind of visiting this site and engaging, which is sort of a typical representation of our audience. But something in addition that came out of this, which was great, was that other teams internally found this as like a really useful engagement tool for them to go on and talk to kind of their stakeholders. So it was really nicely used with the PR and celebrity team, and the campaigns and public affairs team as well found this as a really useful engagement tool. So if you have a flick through, you'll see that some MPs across the UK were kind of jumping on here and sharing a photo in their support as well. One thing to note, I guess, in terms of kind of how we use this was as it was much more of a secondary ask for us. So with it kind of launching towards the end of August, moving into September, we wanted to give people as much time and opportunity to sign up to host a coffee morning initially, and that kind of remained our priority throughout. But then this was just something that we were really proud to be able to have as part of our product offering, and something that really felt like it could bring people together, and it wasn't a if you can't host, you have to do this at all. But lots of people we found who were hosting as well wanted to kind of just be able to share an additional little support message on here as well. So it had kind of a really nice natural fit within the portfolio. And in terms of other places we were able to share it, just in our final recruitment comms, where we had the best idea, I guess, of what was going on closest to the time, we were able to share with them there, like, this, we hope that in September you'll be able to do some sort of socially distanced event or potentially virtual, but please still feel like there is no pressure, because the last thing we wanted to do was kind of be hounding people to take part in an event that they just didn't feel comfortable with this year. So moving on to the results and how it performed for us. Those with a keen eye, or probably those with the clearest laptop, might have been able to see the amount that was fundraised on that page from the screenshot before. But we raised just over £16,000 this year from 815 donations, which, as I was saying, is the equivalent of funding a Macmillan nurse for 69 days. So it feels like a really lovely extra tool that is income we probably wouldn't have been able to get had we not have had this page. But also, rather than just kind of focusing here on the monetary value, I think just the sense of being able to give our supporters something else that they could get involved with if they wanted to. And we had really been thinking about simple asks and simple opportunities and offerings is something we're really pleased that we're able to achieve through this product. And I think the other thing to really point out here with the theme of fast turnaround times is we were really, really pleased and proud of how fast we were able to turn this round. So working with Massive, right from kind of the concept to bringing this idea to life, we had a 5-day sprint, which felt in one way like 5 days, and in one way like we must have been working on it for such a long period of time. And I think that's where we coined the term headphone ear, with the amount of time you had a headset on for. But we were really, really proud in terms of kind of the turnaround time to create a concept that we really loved, and then as well the 6 weeks in which we worked with fundraising to come and create this product and see it brought to life and bring it to market was really, really exciting, and felt like it was a real success and a real successful solution to bring a simple ask and simple donation platform to our coffee morning hosts. So I think that's probably it, I guess, in terms of one final point in kind of summarising the successes, which I think do kind of lie within the speed and efficiency we were able to kind of bring the product and launch it. One thing that feels really great for us is that we did it in a kind of future-proof way. We didn't just kind of launch something and just hope for the best. Like, there was a lot of thought that went behind it, just within a very quick turnaround time, and it was something that we wanted to be able to kind of take forward into future years, where we can kind of take learnings with us and see what can come out of it for future events, and not just across coffee morning, but it's been something we've shared across different teams internally, and the platform itself can be something that has a lot of potential across other products as well. I think that's probably all of my slides.
Thank you so much, Bea. That brings us to the question and answers. And unsurprisingly, you've got a couple. And this is also quite often when people start putting more in. So I'm going to kick one off. Charlie asked, Razor mug customization can be quite expensive for a smaller charity. Have you got any tips for how to encourage this kind of contribution and donation within a community without spending loads of money? Maybe tech to donate.
In terms of Razor mug customization, do you mean in terms of kind of building an additional platform?
I suppose so, yes. Yeah. The feature set.
Yeah, I think text to donate for us has been something that we have used in previous years, which has worked quite well. And I think one thing to say is, if you start asking or offering different things to supporters, I think year on year they then kind of expect them to be there. So I would say maybe have some consideration as to how long term the offering you want to put in place is for. Something that we use this year, which has worked really, really well, is QR codes. And I would say that's in a weird way thanks to the strange situation we've had, because the first time I went to a restaurant, once places started to open, I was like, yes, there's QR codes, people are going to understand what they mean. So yeah, I would say kind of QR codes have been really helpful for us. Text to donate has been an interesting platform for us, but has been actually more difficult to kind of track back the donation to the supporter. And I think for us, being able to thank supporters for their full donation amount is something that's really key and something that people expect as well. And I'd say, I think on depending on kind of the platform you use, there might just be other simple ways of kind of not having to build a whole site, but maybe building a page where people can kind of donate to that page as a collective, instead of kind of needing all of the fancy images and messages built on top.
Great, thank you. A question following on from kind of how you wrapped up, really, about future-proofing. So Ali has asked, what does 2021 look like for Coffee Morning? Will you be continuing to offer some of the new propositions developed this year?
Oh, great question. I wish I could take your brain and put us with you, because we need, we're going through all of our 2021 strategy stuff at the moment. I think we're still very much in kind of evaluation stage for some of the propositions that we put forward for this year. So there's definitely no kind of final answer. But I think kind of more looking at the products that we did put out there, and using Razor Mug as an example for that, it had a lot of potential, and there were some things that we obviously, within kind of the times, we couldn't necessarily build on for this year. Like, we would have loved to have had a bit more of a kind of social sharing aspect, but I think looking a bit more holistically how we can tie in some of our corporate partners, and maybe something like the Raise a Mug platform would be something that would work really well with some of our partners who I think, I'll leave it there because putting it out there could kind of create a whole new scope of kind of where a product could be taken. But yeah, not necessarily just focusing on within the Coffee Morning team, what can we do for 2021, but looking at how we can work with our partners or the PR and celeb team and opening it up a little bit more to develop the propositions, make them a bit wider.
Right, we've got another question here from David. He asks, how did the virtual coffee morning do this fall?
So in terms of virtual coffee morning, I guess taking a bit of a step back, we initially offered coffee morning as two sort of propositions where you could sign up to host either a virtual coffee morning or a socially distanced coffee morning, and then a Raise a Mug was sort of a virtual platform within a part of the offering as well. It really changed during the months all the way leading up to signing up, and I think if you plotted a map against kind of the what people were signing up for as government announcements were being released, it kind of changed a little bit. I think most of our hosts really were really optimistic that they would do some sort of event in person, whether it was something where people would do kind of takeaway cakes rather than necessarily kind of getting people together on a screen. And I think that's partly to do with our audience are typically a little bit older, so perhaps a little bit less tech savvy, without making a huge generalization. And I think a lot of our hosts that we found taking part this year are kind of the loyal ones that hold it year on year, so they will find a way of doing something in person. And we have a Facebook group that hosts can join, and we left kind of a lot of organic conversation to happen there. So we found that actually a lot of the ideas for coffee morning kind of came out of them and listening to our supporters. So although we had virtual coffee morning as an idea for people, I would say much, I don't know, in terms of percentages, I'd say only about 15% of people committed to saying they were going to hold a virtual coffee morning, compared to the rest who thought they would do some sort of takeaway, or as I was calling them, cakeaways.
Nice.
But then in terms of, that's a great pun and not one we even came up with ourselves.
No.
But in terms of the actual numbers, I'm not sure that we would kind of ever know that once they've kind of sent their donation in.
Great. And then there's another question, I guess, similar, looking at the portfolio from Stephen. Did this campaign replace a standard online donation flow for coffee morning, so as it Raise a Mug? And was there any confusion by having different offerings? I guess it's difficult to compare, but did this increase direct online donations compared to other years?
I'm just reading your questions. I've got it on the screen as well, so there's kind of two parts to that one. I wouldn't say it did replace kind of the standard online donation flow. We very much kept coffee morning as a hosted product. So by hosted, I guess I mean a socially distanced or virtual, but we know most people were at least intending to have a hosted in-person event, and we kept that journey the same as it is year on year. So we have kind of all of the standard ways you can pay in terms of like either an online donation or like going to the bank and paying in on your slip, but that is very much allocated to the supporter and their registration number, so they actually have to sign up, and we then collect their details and kind of track back that donation, whereas Raise a Mug was sat on a microsite which is very separate to that, so we could have there kind of wasn't any confusion, I suppose, between what the two were, and we didn't find that people were using Raise a Mug to pay in their coffee morning donations. I think we were able to keep that very clear, but I think that was all the way through from kind of our marketing and then stewardship of a coffee morning event. We kept the two products very clearly separate, but that Raise a Mug was an additional way that if you wanted to support us, you could.
Great, thank you.
Very much for that. Also shout out to Stephen, who was a speaker for one of our other Us and Us sessions a month and a bit ago. Good to see you here. All right, well, I think that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much, Fee, we knew you'd get grilled at the end, but thank you for that. I want to take a moment just to say, kind of thank you to all of the speakers that we've had across the past 10 months. It has been a crazy year. It has been a bizarre time, and the collective, when it started out, was very much designed to be something which allowed us all to share best practice and allowed us to sort of inspire each other to keep on trying new things. And it feels incredibly cathartic to be doing this session where we can point to some of the amazing things that have been done, to have Fee here, like, kind of answering all these questions and showcasing something like Raise a Mug, which, I think most people do know what the Macmillan Coffee Morning, and for people to see that, it's fantastic. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for the work you do. Thank you, Emily, for being my co-host for so long now.
Pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who was doing feedback surveys for us to help us sort of keep making these sessions have some value. This is a community-driven thing. We are a community. It's great. There's Stephen, and it's great to add you on here, Fee, and everyone else who's been here from all across the sector. So thank you, everyone. That brings the session to an end. Have a fantastic Christmas. Breathe. I know I definitely am going to. And yeah, we'll see you in 2021.
And thanks to you as well, Brendan.
Oh, well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.